Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rokture Ramblings, where I discuss topics around digital marketing, marketing technology, and marketing operations for the financial services industry. It's been a long time, but today's topic is around a post that I had made on LinkedIn, and it had to do with TD Bank recently closing a number of different branches. It made the national news, and so I figured this is something that I should touch upon because ultimately what's happening here is that there is a lot of digital transformation that's taking place. So today is, can digital replace the brick and mortar branch? These are the subtopics that we'll go over, which is what's missing in digital, security and trust, compliance and fraud, impact to community, what do customers want, and then the future in terms of what that's going to bring. So let's start off with what's missing. Everybody, for the most part, understands that digital is very powerful, very scalable, but ultimately there is something that's missing from that experience. And the first thing is that personalization is pretty much lacking on a lot of digital transactions. It's effective, it's productive, it's efficient, but it's not personalized. You don't get that conversation that you do at the branch, and you don't get that sort of personal touch that is there if you are a familiar site to those branch employees. The experiences on digital are also very generic too. They're made for the sort of 80-20, or they use the 80-20 rule. So they cater to the 80% of the audience and what it is that they're doing, and not necessarily for your specific needs. Now, the great news is that AI can change that perception, and it can really make digital a lot more effective and a lot more personalized. It's just a matter of making sure that financial institutions actually make use of that technology to drive those types of experiences. But you do have to be careful because you have to seek a balance. As too much personalization is a little bit creepy. And also, on top of that, your personalization is only as good as the data sources that you have. So one example that I often see is that if somebody has their full name in their records for the financial institution, you want to refer to them as the name that they prefer to be used. Of course, that's harder to capture, but it also tells them immediately that, oh, you're just pulling from some record out there because nobody calls me my full name. Next is around security and trust. So the biggest risk to brand perception is some sort of security intrusion. The moment that it's all over the news that such and such financial institution had records that were compromised, then there goes your brand's value. So that has to be protected no matter what. The other problem too is that it's not only an internal issue, but you have to make sure to vet your third party vendors. Even if it's something that took place with a partner or a vendor, if it's associated with your brand name, then your brand will also suffer, and you'll have to suffer the consequences of that. So data hygiene and access to these data elements is critical, and you should only offer access to this type of confidential data on an as needed basis. So make sure that that is very tightly controlled, and also make sure that you have regular security assessments, as that's the only way to make sure that there's really no or very little risk in terms of your data getting compromised. At institutions that I've worked in the past, we've actually had like hacking parties or hacking activities to see who can break in, and also that's facilitated by a security company that specializes in that. So that's probably something worth evaluating. Compliance and fraud are also concerns too. So when you get rid of that physical branch, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier for fraudsters to scale and attack the operations that you are engaging in. So digital really is the easiest entry for fraud because it's oftentimes anonymous, and also it opens up the entire world to be able to try to access your assets and try to break in. Technology can help with this to uncover where there's instances of fraud, but just make sure that it's not intrusive. You don't want to penalize the good to try to keep out the evil, because ultimately, if you make it too intrusive, everybody will leave, and that doesn't really put you in a good position. But done right, this type of compliance and fraud monitoring can actually reduce expenses and increase the brand value, as people associate your brand with a brand that is very compliant, very sort of difficult to commit against in terms of fraud, and also that again there's safety and trust and just a great perception of the brand when you have this in place. The impact to communities. So when it comes to closing branches, oftentimes these decisions are made just looking at a spreadsheet and not absolutely understanding and wondering, well, what is it going to do to that local community? So make sure to consider the impact of those closures. The key here is that a lot of, especially small businesses, they want to do business with a local firm. And so with that, you want to make sure that when a branch does close, that you still maintain some sort of local presence. And that will help to at least alleviate that concern and let them understand that there are options in terms of being able to still conduct business, even though it may not necessarily be at what we traditionally know as a branch. The other things too is to tailor offerings to suit clients and the region. So there are some regional differences. Every town is different. Every business's need is different. So if a branch is something that is an integral part of that experience, maybe it's time to reevaluate whether it's worth closing it or not, or to come up with an alternative that is suitable and not so compromised that it takes away from what those offerings might be. But ultimately, what you want to do, though, in assessing whether the digital experience can take the place of a branch experience, is to take a look at your customer preferences. So, some brands are better off keeping those branches. If the brand is really into personal service and being there as a local community partner, it may be at your best interest to keep those branches. The other thing too is also depending on the level of sophistication or the level of complex solutions that you're offering. Those may require an in-person visit. So if it's not a traditional branch with tellers and transactions to take place, some sort of a meeting place needs to be established to allow those discussions to take place, because it almost always ends up being a better experience when it's face to face. And then finally, where are your customers? Are they doing business digitally? If they're not, then now is not a time to start forcing them to do so. But if they are, then maybe that is their preference. Where do they prefer to do business? If you aren't seeing a lot of foot traffic, is it because of your branch location or is it because they prefer to do business digitally? So be where your clients want you to be and your customers want you to be, and don't force them because of expense cutting measures that are taking place. So where does this leave us? There's always going to be a combination of physical and digital. There are so many different scenarios and circumstances that it really makes sense to do what is best for your customers. And in some cases, that is going to be a branch. And I also believe that there are instances where individuals use both physical and digital in order to really be able to keep that relationship going with your institution. So think strategically and not short term, as those expense reductions of eliminating those branches could have a damaging impact on your brand as a whole. And then also within the entire organization, preach flexibility, as that's something that with business evolving, technology evolving, everything's going to sort of be circular in terms of there may be instances where branches are out of style and out of vogue, but then people will start to gravitate and crave that personal experience that you can only get in person. So just read the market, read what your customers and clients are telling you, and try to react and act accordingly. So with that, that's my deeper dive into this topic. As I mentioned, I did post this on LinkedIn, and so there you'll see, and also a blog entry on my website. But this page here just has my contact information. So if you do want to discuss this or any other topic that has to do with anything having to do with digital and within financial services, then reach out to me. Look forward to speaking to you again, and hopefully we'll make these a little bit more frequent and touch upon some other subjects going forward. Thank you. Bye bye.